Women to Watch is an intimate look into the lives of prominent and influential women leaders from around the world and the challenges they faced on their journey. It's the real story behind her title. Join us every week to hear more stories about women from around the world and in your own communities at womentowatch.net.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco. It's so great to be here with you. We have another great show for you this week. Joining me in just a moment will be Heidi Messer. Heidi is the co-founder and chairperson for Collective Eye, which is an online platform supporting sales teams utilizing AI, helping them optimize their revenue. So it's going to be a really great conversation with Heidi, and she has an incredibly successful professional story. As always, stay with us during the breaks where you'll hear from our corporate partners. Comcast NBC Universal with Carol Eggert bringing you our military watch, and Madeline Bell, CEO of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, with our CEO watch, and Jane Vidoni, president of Penn Community Bank, and Sherry Morrison for our lifestyle watch is going to be joined by Laura Taylor today. And Laura is the founder of a company called Mingle Mocktails. So they're non-alcoholic drinks. So now I'm very honored and excited to welcome to the show, Heidi Messer.
Hi, nice to see you, Sue.
Hi, great to have you, Heidi. We were chit-chatting before we started recording, and I think it'd be nice for the viewers to know that I have, known who you are and followed your work for over 10 years. And you've been so gracious in kind of connecting me to other women. But I really wanted to get you on the show. And so I finally have. I'm going to turn the tables a little bit because I know you have your own space where you get to ask questions for some really incredible leaders globally. So today we're going to do that with you. And I wanted to start out with your upbringing in Westchester, New York, and have you talk to me a little bit about your mom, who I know has been an incredible mentor for you, an inspiration.
Yeah, she's really an amazing woman. I mean, I think, you and I are blessed to live in a time where a lot of women paved the way for us to do what we're doing. And I sort of had a front row seat to see that happening where, it's very often I walk into the room and I'm definitely in the minority.
Yeah.
But I think, my mom would walk in the room and really be the only person, the only woman there. So she actually started off as a teacher. And, she says in her time, there were three choices. You could be a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary. That's what they refer to people who were helping out in offices. And so she chose teacher and then actually stopped working when my brother and I were born. And unfortunately, my father passed away very suddenly of a heart attack at age 41 and had started a business. And she took over his business. It was a business in the real estate space, commercial real estate and commercial maintenance, meaning the people who clean buildings, and really grew his business to 3 times the size of what it was, but was one of the only single mothers I knew growing up. And, they used to call us latchkey kids, like we would come home and let ourselves in. So I went from having, the person who was at home all the time to the person who was working 12 to 14-hour days. And watching both of those examples and seeing her, do what a lot of people thought was impossible and really statistically was impossible, be, successful and raise 2 children and put them through college and graduate school. She was such an inspiration. She is such an inspiration for me to this very day.
With you. I'm so glad. Yeah. How old were you when you lost your dad?
I was 11 and my brother was 10.
Wow.
So really, it was, and we had just moved to a new place, and it was a really, really challenging time for our family. But, when I look back and see what it taught us, I would never, if I could, wave a wand and say, like, these are the circumstances you're given, I would not have picked those circumstances. But looking back, it actually made us better entrepreneurs. It made us a closer family. My brother's to this day my business partner.
Mhm.
It shaped so much of our lives going forward.
Well, because you had to come together and do what needed to be done. And, sometimes those experiences can really break down a family. But it sounds like your mom really just decided, this is what I need to do. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, incredible. And she did it in we joke because, my whole family is entrepreneurs, literally every branch of the family tree. And her parents were entrepreneurs in the they made fabrics. And so they would always say, don't start a business with inventory. And then, my dad's business that became my mom's business was in real estate. And, my mom and dad would say, don't do a business in real estate. So my brother and I were left only with technology. I mean, there's not, left there. And both of us worked in the family business from the time we were probably 13, 14 years old.
Oh,
So,
wow. Oh, you
um,
learned from an early age what it takes to
yeah,
be
and when you work in a low margin business, take, for example, office cleaning. I mean, the margins are slim. It's a complete commodity. No one ever says like, "Oh, that was a beautiful toilet that was cleaned." Like, you really learn it's the hard, I call it the Olympics of business. You really learn how to succeed in an area where there's so little margin for error, that, taking those skills and transferring them to another industry was really, really helpful.
Yeah. Tell me when you were little and you were, as you talked about being surrounded by entrepreneurs, it really is a different environment than, watching mom or dad go to a company, you know, put the card in the clock and come home. You- what did you want to be? What did you want to be when you were little? What were you aspiring to
Well, if you asked me
before?
when I was 6, I wanted to be president of the United States. And
Oh, I
then
love that. That's a
well,
big,
that
hefty
was my
goal.
standard answer. And it changed over time. And I think that's the nice part of being an entrepreneur, is that being an entrepreneur allows you to actually dream about maybe, the thing that you want to create. You can kind of create. Now, I want to be honest about it, which is like there's a lot of things that you do as an entrepreneur that are not just what you want to do all the time. Um, but it lets you dream. So there were a couple times in my childhood that, like, I wanted to start businesses, and I thought of starting businesses. At one point we had an art show in our house. I thought I would be like a gallery owner with my own art, which obviously did not pan out. Um, but it's that constant reinvention that I think led me to entrepreneurship, because as an entrepreneur, you are a good entrepreneur, or an extraordinary entrepreneur completely can reinvent themselves to adapt to times that are changing. And I think that's probably a key difference between somebody who goes to a company, as you say, puts punches in the clock. Somebody else is responsible for the reinvention.
Yes,
You
you go
come
home and
and
forget. You can let it
yeah,
go. Yeah.
right. You show up and you do whatever the reinventor, has set forth for you. Whereas if you're the person responsible for the reinvention, you have to have the imagination and be able to have the agility to say, there are things about how I think about the world that have to be changed.
Yeah. So, Heidi, the space you're in really, it's the STEM field, it's technology, it's AI, and it requires a certain level of intellect, I will say. Were you always good in the math and science in school? Did you lean towards that and did you enjoy it?
Yeah, well, what's funny is, my brother was not good at school, and the joke in our family is that my mom, the teacher, who she went to Columbia for her master's in teaching, and she has this first kid that is reading at age 2.5. That me, I'm the older one, and excelling in school and doing all these things. Then she gets this second kid who, like, doesn't want to read, doesn't. And I, by the way, I tell this story because I know there's people who are going to listen to
His
this
name
who
is Stephen, right?
his
Stephen,
name
we're
is
talking.
Stephen, who
Yeah.
either have that child or are that child.
Hmm.
And so she was like, "Oh, well, if he's slow, it's not fair to put him through the same rigor that I expect of my daughter." So they had him tested, and of course his IQ was like off the charts genius, and as a lot of people with learning differences are. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I was a bookworm growing up. I mean, my face was always in a book. You know, I would say the one thing that I am so excited about now is how much more encouragement girls get to go into STEM,
Mhm.
than, when I was younger, it was not like there was no consciousness of that. So you could kind of
No.
see people like, trickling through the system and the funnel getting smaller and smaller.
Yes.
That's all changed. So, but I think, to be good at AI, or not even good at AI, to embrace artificial intelligence, which is, in my view, the future, and we all are going to have to adapt to it. It's not necessarily a monopoly on the math and science side of the fence. I think it's having unique skills that are uniquely human. So being exceptionally creative, those kind of people will do extremely well in AI. You don't have to be a math and science geek to do well in the field. To be very good at relating to people, going back to what Collective I does, sales, like relationship building. There are things that are uniquely human. And so great AI should enable human greatness, not the other way around.
Yeah. I love the way you describe that, because I think a topic that it's often just brought to your collective forecast, which is these gatherings of kind of sharing and learning information, is the ethical side of it. And that's the greatest worry, I would say, for people who really don't understand and don't have experience in what it can do from a
Totally.
positive standpoint. And we'll talk about that. I do have some questions about that for you later. I want to share. I have a question from a viewer, and I believe you saw it yourself. I just think this really says who you are. Um, Michelle, I hope I don't butcher this name. Alkerzak from Proof Point said,
Oh, I love
how, let's
Michelle.
ask Heidi how she's able to make every person, customer, friend, colleague, acquaintance feel as though you are fully and personally invested in their total success.
Oh my
That,
gosh, that's
that
such a nice question.
it is
Um,
such a nice question.
well,
Yeah.
Michelle is an awesome, awesome person, and if anyone is looking for security software, Michelle is the person to talk to. Um, so I don't know. I mean, it's really nice to hear that people feel that way. I think for me, I'm just a fundamentally curious person, and I read somewhere that people who, regardless of how you feel about Bill Clinton, anyone who's gone to see Bill Clinton speak live, they've said that, he looks right through you. He makes every person in the audience feel like they're there. And I'm guessing that that's because, people who have extreme empathy, who can really like look and say, get outside themselves and say, I want to understand what makes this person interesting. What can I learn from this person? And I have that view. Like I feel like every person I interact with has something that I don't know. And
Mm.
so my job is to figure out, like, what is it that I can learn from this person? And I owe them a debt of gratitude for that. Like whatever they teach me, whoever they introduce me to, whatever insight they share with me, that's like currency. And so I need to pay them back that debt when I meet them. So maybe I don't know, maybe that's why people feel that way. But
Yeah,
that's
it's
such
a
a nice
wonderful
question.
testament. And I think it's exactly what you said, getting out of yourself, ego. We could talk a whole show about ego and why it gets in the way and why it kind of strips people from being authentically who they are. Um, and you do that very well. You're just able to do it.
Yeah, and just going back to my mom, I think a lot of, and I don't mean to generalize because isn't just a woman thing, but I think women are taught from a very young age to care a lot about what other people think,
Mm.
and pleasing other people. And, my dad used to have a great saying. He was like, you're 10 minutes in anyone's life. Like, whatever you do that they want to gossip about, that's 10 minutes. And then they've moved on
Mm.
and forgotten about it. And so are you going to live your life for those 10 minutes and worry about what other people think? Or are you going to live your life the way that you were meant to? And I think if you can lose the fear of what does this person think of me, and just actually get to the genuine person you are, ironically, people will actually respond to that in a way that, people can smell out when you're trying to be fake or phony or try to impress them. And so I don't know. I think that piece of advice really, really helps me.
Yeah, truly think that's the greatest lesson, particularly for young women. And unfortunately, by nature, we learn it a little bit later So I
Yeah.
always tell my daughter, I don't want you to wait till you're in your late 40s, 50s, 60s to believe in yourself. You're going to do it now
Right.
and be who you are. Be
That's
that.
amazing.
Yeah. So I wanted to, just so the viewers know exactly, Collective Forecast, which I was referencing, is a weekly online session that brings together great minds across all industries. It's an opportunity for someone like me to come on, which I absolutely love, and have the opportunity to ask a question directly to someone who, again, just one of the greatest minds in their field. I wanted to, I don't know if you can answer this question. You've had some incredible people. Do you have a favorite? Did you have any aha moments of your own during a
Oh my
session
gosh.
from one of your guests?
Well, for anyone
Stand
who wants
out?
to join, if you want to hear what Sue's talking about, the URL that sets out where everyone is CI, so it's short for Collective I Forecast.com. And I learned something in every forecast, but not always from the speaker. A lot of times, so the format of it is community question and answer. So, and I love when Sue, you come on, because you always, we were talking about this in the break, how you always ask such great questions. It's so interesting to me. It's an embodiment of our name. So our name is short for Collective Intelligence, which is a community generated intelligence. So really, almost the featured speaker is the facilitator of the conversation. It's about them, but it's about like sharing insights and information. So you have somebody who's studied a field, like, today we're featuring the guy who founded Google Earth. Like, I'm so excited to learn, like,
Yeah.
what makes you, like, makes you decide to wake up one morning and create a map of the Earth? Like, what does that?
Yeah.
You asked a great question of Terry Crews, who, is one of the most motivational people I've listened to. Reid Hoffman, listening to him, talk about how they thought about OpenAI and creating, ChatGPT and DALL-E, and Eric Schmidt talking about his days at Google. I think, the reason we open sourced it was these are people that you normally would have to get invited to Davos to listen to. And we live in this
Pay a
age where,
hefty fee. You're normally paying money to be able to
right,
to
and
someone.
why intelligence should be shared, right? It should
Yeah.
be education should be free. Like, it shouldn't. Why are we hoarding things that could help us create the next, amazing thing? So for me, I've learned, I can't say I have a favorite. I think the community is my favorite. It's
Yes.
all the people who come who push the envelope and push everyone's thinking further.
Yeah. Listen, we're going to go into our first break, and we'll continue when we come back. Stay with us for our watch team, and we'll be back with Heidi Messer.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm joined this week by Heidi Messer, co-founder and chairperson of Collective Eye. And I wanted to start this segment and ask you, you've been an incredibly successful entrepreneur. And I was curious what for you is the scariest part when you're first launching something new?
Well, it's interesting because before I started, my first company was called LinkShare. Now it's called Rakuten LinkShare. And then Collective Eye. Before that, I was actually an attorney. I went through law school and you have, when you go into a settled profession, there's a path. There's a rule book, okay, if you build this many hours, if you can bring in this much business, you'll become partner, and that's considered success. When you make the leap to go into entrepreneurship, you're actually creating something that, or I think the most interesting entrepreneurial opportunities are creating something that never existed before. So there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. There's a lot more failure, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about all the failures they have to get to the success. So I would say the scary part is you're really leaping into the unknown. There's no safety net. There's no HR department that you can go talk to and say, how do I handle this problem? There's no known outcome. And so you have to get really comfortable with the unknown and a lot of moving pieces, markets changing, in our industry, you have a ChatGPT that launches and suddenly all the puzzle pieces get moved or the chess pieces get moved around to different places. So it's that to me that I think is the scariest, but exciting thing as well.
Right. And what would you say is your process? So, I joke about, I know for me in starting this show 10 years ago, it was almost naivete that just kept me going and figuring stuff out. Or are you very goal oriented and you have a strategy and this is what you're going to do to make something work?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you portray it that way, because I remember speaking to you when you were launching this and you did not sound like, oh, figuring it out. You were very directed and had a vision. And so I think it may be relative to other people in your mind, but I don't see you that way. I think for me, I'm a very strategic thinker. So my process is you start with a mission. You translate that mission into a vision of where you want to be, and then you come up with a strategy. And the strategy, I think, can be the hardest part. And in fact, sometimes you don't, do anything before you have a sort of strategy in place. And then, in your mind what you're trying to accomplish, the assumptions that went in your strategy, and you get into tactical execution. And if any of those assumptions that you had change, about your market, about, your mission and vision shouldn't change, but your strategy can be adjusted. And so for me, that's my process. It's a dynamic process, because when you're in a field as fast moving as artificial intelligence, a lot of times, the timing of when you thought things would happen changes, the market's reaction to it. You mentioned, ethical or responsible AI, like, suddenly you're like, oh, this thing is really getting big fast. Like, what are some new things I need to be thinking about at the same time? And you start adding things into your strategy. So that's my process.
Well, I have to ask you, in reference to that, there was a headline in the Wall Street Journal this morning that Elon Musk posted about AI is moving so quickly and maybe we need to slow it down. Tell me what your
Yeah,
take
I
is
saw
on that.
that, and I'll tell you my visceral reaction to it, which was, I don't think ever in the history anyone has been able to slow down technological innovation. I mean, it's a little bit like climate change. Like, okay, there are things you can do to be a good contributor to, the Earth's health, but unless everyone in the world gets behind that, it's a very hard thing to execute. So saying to the whole world, like, everyone just stop,
Right.
especially when, he's sort of the poster child for like, let's bulldozer over, and anything that's in his way. So I don't know. I think there's things that I would like people to take a moment to consider. I don't know how realistic it is to say, let's try as a global economy to slow this down, because I just don't have faith that, the Chinese or the Russians or the North Koreans are going to slow down their development. And I would not want to be on the wrong side of that, right? I wouldn't want to be the one that was technologically disadvantaged because we all collectively said we're afraid of an outcome that could happen and let's slow down. That's my visceral reaction to his
Yeah, it's interesting. And
proclamation.
yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, something that will never change is that, and hopefully, I say to my kids all the time, most people are good. The majority of people are good, but there
Mhm.
will always be bad actors that will take things that we're developing and creating and use them in the wrong way. That's just a sad reality.
Yes.
So the best you can do is move forward in your lane and stay in that positive realm of what you're creating.
Totally. And there's so many positive uses for AI. I mean, our mission is to make the world a more prosperous place. So I actually want the people that are clients of Collective Eye to personally, advance their goals to be, more financially successful using our technology. I think there's other uses of AI that are curing diseases. Do I want that slowed down because I'm afraid somebody's going to use it, to create a weapon of mass destruction or, control an entire population? Like, I don't know that you can get the good without the bad. You can eliminate everything. You eliminate the good by slowing down as much as you
Yes,
mitigate the risk of the bad. And the problem with the bad is if you're a bad actor with intent, you're not going to slow down. Right.
correct.
So you
Yeah,
lose all the good. So I'd be curious as to what, his vision of that slowing down process is.
yeah. Something that you had said that I really appreciated in another interview you did. You said I prefer dialogue as opposed to hierarchy, politics, or fanfare, and that to me tells me something about your leadership style. And you never want to be the only one in the room with ideas. So when you think about your role with Collective Eye and the people that work for you, what is at the forefront of your mind to keep them motivated and have them feel as though they are very much a part of what you're creating and doing?
Yeah. Well, look, no, I think a leader's job is to marshal the best resources, both human and otherwise, they can to accomplish a shared vision. Right. So by definition, I need to be enlisting people that bring something to the party that I don't have. If I knew everything, and I think this, by the way, feeds into the whole diversity narrative. It's not Diversity isn't about charity, right? It's not about, oh, you should do this because it's the right thing to do. Yes, exclusion is the wrong thing to do, but diversity is really about getting the best, most diverse thought minds in a room together so that you can come up with ideas that collectively are better than any individual could do on their own.
Hmm.
By the way, AI, when you talk about AI, we talk about the diversity of data. Like, you have to have a diverse enough data set to be able to generate insights that are really compelling and game changing. And if you don't have diversity in your data, you're not going to have diversity in your outcomes. I think that way when I bring a team together. So there are times when, maybe I'm the one that has the experience and the judgment to say, hey, that's a good idea, but I've seen it play out and it's not going to work. But there are times when, I just had a colleague who came to me with a great idea that, I would never have thought of. And I'm like, okay, we got to get the team behind it and execute on it. And so it kind of goes back to your earlier question of, you know, making people feel heard. It's not because you're intentionally trying to make them feel heard. It's because you're actually listening. And that's what I
Yeah.
try to bring to, to the teams that I manage is, I want to hear something that's not something I've thought of. And if I'm the one that's bringing all the ideas, then I probably don't have the strongest team
Yeah.
behind me.
Well, again, you're doing that well because, as you said earlier, you have the ability to step out of yourself and allow, and curiosity drives that. You genuinely want to learn. You genuinely want to continue to create something that is
Wouldn't
for
you
the
be bored
collective.
if you did your job every day
Yeah,
and you weren't learning? I
correct.
mean, I think you have such a great role, right? You get to hear from all these incredible women, and don't you learn something every time you do one of
Every
these?
time. Every time. It's a gift every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you said entrepreneurs are universally optimistic. And I believe that. Um, Sometimes people will, optimism, they look at it as if it's just a sidebar to something, but they don't really understand the importance of that. What would you say about the importance of being optimistic as an entrepreneur?
Well, so your odds aren't super, right? Because I think 80% of all ventures fail. So if you don't have some level of excitement for what you're doing, you're going to go into it. If I gave you a task and said, um, there's an 80% chance that you're going to fail at this task, and you started the task with that, it would become self-fulfilling. So I think you have to have the optimism to say, I'm in that 20%. Like I'm already in the rarefied air that's out there. You have to have the optimism to say, there's something that the world needs that I can create that didn't exist before. That's an optimistic view of the future. I don't think anyone sets out to create a company. Well, would hope that no one sets out to create a company that creates destruction in its wake.
Right.
And so I think there's that, and there's a lot of I try to talk about this when people ask me about entrepreneurship. Like entrepreneurship can be very lonely. It can be exhausting. It's not all what you read about in the media. In fact, when I started, entrepreneurs were the people who couldn't become doctors, lawyers, or bankers. Like they were the ones that didn't have anything. It's why you saw a lot of immigrants become entrepreneurs, because they weren't able to break into the established, quote unquote, establishment. So I think you have to have a view that's optimistic enough that you can see the opportunity even in downturns.
Mm.
And that's different than, I would say, blind, um, I don't know how you would say it, like recklessness. It's not recklessness. It's not like, oh, I can do anything. Like I can, change, like remove gravity from the earth. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's more like every time, it's the old saying, like turn lemons into lemonade. I think entrepreneurs, that's their constant go-to place. Like, oh, you just gave me lemons. I can see what I can do with that. Like there's a resourcefulness that's behind the optimism.
Yeah. Heidi, do you know what it is in a word that drives you, everything that you do? In other words, what if you could wave that wand over the world, what would you like to see change be done? What is it that, you yearn for?
I think there's nothing more fun than succeeding as a group. So I'm not a person who loves to get to the mountaintop and say, like, I beat everyone else. I like to win with a team, and whether that's like, you can start with our country, right? Like I want to see everyone in our country benefit from AI. I don't think it should be a world where there's, five people who, and that, I think when you listen to someone like Elon, like that's his fear. And ironically, like he is positioned to be one of those people. So I want to see a world where, people are healthier, people live longer. I think we're moving towards a 4-day work week because machines can do a lot of the things that,
I'm all for
cause
that.
stress. I think we all are. And I want to see kids that are educated to be able to have highly fulfilling jobs that emphasize skills that aren't ones that, a machine could do, which if a machine can do, then they're probably pretty boring jobs to start with. And so for me, the goal, it comes back to our name, collective intelligence. Like, how do we win as a group and pool all of our resources together so that everyone ends up on top? There isn't this concept of like scarcity and rarity amongst, people being able to live wonderful, fulfilling lives.
Yeah. I've always believed that what holds women back, not just women, people, is a lack of belief. And I think it's the very first thing you have to get a hold of is knowing who you are and believing you have something to contribute or you want to because you have something creative to do. So a lot of women watch this show and they're stuck, and
Yeah.
with all of the resources and support and books and networking groups, everything that's going on right now in the arena of women's empowerment, there's still a lack of, I would say, self-empowerment. I don't think you can empower someone else. I think it has to come from within. So as someone who's done that, what would you say to someone listening that might move them beyond 2 seconds of inspiration and into action?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that is harder for women is you are doubted by more people, right? So, when I look at, say, for example, a sports team, and everyone says we want everyone to operate at their optimal level because that's how the team wins. I think a lot of times, the perception or the unconscious bias that goes into how a woman's actions are perceived, like you may actually be trying to help the team win, but it's perceived in a different way. So I would say the first thing is to really know who you are, what your strengths are, and hold that sacred. So there's no one that can take that away from you, right? Like the people who doubt you, um, you may not know everything, right? And you don't have to know everything. We've all heard the statistic of, men will apply for a job with 2 out of 10 skills. Women need to have 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Um, you clearly do not need to know everything, but you need to know enough of yourself to say like, oh, back to Michelle's question, I'm an incredibly empathetic, persuasive communicator. So I know I would be good at this kind of role. And then kind of let people give you advice that fuels that core skill set, but don't let them give you advice that derails you and makes you question your core strengths. And that's a tricky thing to do. I don't think that's easy for anyone.
It's not. It's not. And it's because of the noise. And not only that, society kind of teaches us, this is how you do it. And everybody should follow in tow and do it this way. And so we get pulled to that. And then we're losing our sense of self.
Totally. And I
Very hard.
think give yourself permission to make mistakes. I think that's when you try to be perfect, they used to say perfect is the enemy of good. I've added now slow is also the enemy of good. I think know you're going to make mistakes and know that you can recover from them.
Yeah.
Like you're going to fall down. And if you try to live your life, I always say there's 2 types of people who play not to lose and people who play to win. And ironically, the people who play not to lose tend to lose more than the people who play to win.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you're going to trip, you're going to fall, you're going to have to get back
You're
up, and
human. You're
you're
human.
human. And there's no great anything, fill in the blank, entrepreneur, person in entertainment, person, whatever, who hasn't fallen and had to get up and start again.
Yeah. Yeah. How fun is it to work with your brother? That's my
I
last
work with my
question.
brother and my husband,
Oh,
and
and
I
yeah.
am the luckiest person on earth. I get to work with my
Oh,
2 best friends every day,
oh,
and that
that's
is,
awesome.
I'm so lucky.
Yeah. They
So
have your back all the
they
time.
have my back, and I think that is I'm hesitant to give advice to people because if you don't have that support system, it's a lot harder.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah. It's very true. Well, We're out of time. I had a whole other page of questions for you that we didn't get to, but it was such a great conversation. And thank you so much for taking time to share a bit of your story with me here today. I know it's going to inspire someone.
Well, Sue, thank you so much. And I am so impressed by what you've built. I saw it in the beginning, and where it's come is unbelievable. So
Oh, thank you.
congratulations.
I appreciate that so much. Stay with us, and you'll hear from Sherry Morrison, who's going to be with Laura Taylor, the founder of Mingle Mocktails. We'll be right back.
It's the #1 news at 10 p.m. Action News on PHL 17. Join Shari Williams, Gray Hall, Deuces Rogers, and meteorologist Adam Joseph for all the big stories at a time that's right for you. Action News at 10 p.m. on PHL 17.
Hi, this is Sue Rocco. Women to Watch is pleased to share a clip from Breaking Through, a podcast hosted by Madeline Bell, the president and CEO of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. This interview is part of a series in which Madeline interviews CHOP's women scientists about what inspires them and advice they have for other women interested in pursuing science and medicine careers.
My guest today is Dr. Holly Hedrick. Dr. Hedrick is a pediatric and fetal surgeon at CHOP. She is also co-director of a frontier program that focuses on a rare condition called congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Dr. Hedrick, welcome to Breaking Through.
Thank you.
What inspired you to pursue a career in surgery?
I think it probably started with my father. He was a dentist in a small town, and I was his assistant, putting on the little bib. So I think the first inspiration was definitely my father.
Can you tell us what is congenital diaphragmatic hernia?
Congenital diaphragmatic hernia is a birth defect that happens very early, around the 11th week of gestation. And the diaphragm, which is really the separation between the chest and the abdomen, it has a defect in it. And this defect allows things that are supposed to be in the abdomen, like the liver, the spleen, the stomach, the intestines, it allows them to move up into the chest. About 85 to 90% of the patients we see with CDH are diagnosed before they are born, and we can plan for it, and they are right here at the time.
Why did you decide to specialize in this condition?
Early on, this was way back in residency. It was considered an unsolved problem, and so I was involved in preclinical studies and really developed a desire. And so that whole spectrum of the disease and that whole life course was really attractive to me.
To hear more of Madeline's interviews with CHOP's amazing doctors and scientists, listen to Breaking Through with Madeline Bell, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the lifestyle segment of Women to Watch. I'm Sherry Morrison. Today I have the pleasure to introduce Laura Taylor, founder and chief Mingle officer of Mingle Mocktails. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to chat with you.
It's exciting to have you here. We've been in touch over the years on and off for quite a while now, and I'm excited to let everybody know about what you've accomplished here and how you've grown. You've done a fantastic job. So Laura has developed and launched Mingle Mocktails in 2017. And before we get into how she switched gears and changed her career, Laura, please tell us a little bit about where you're from and your education.
Sure. I grew up in San Diego and never planned on living in Philadelphia, but here we are. I went to college at California Polytechnic State University, or Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, for industrial engineering, and dove in using that degree in engineering sales before moving on to companies like Accenture, IBM, and Tableau Software.
Wow, there's some pretty big names in the industry. How about that? So you must have done pretty well. In 2017, you made a personal decision to stop drinking alcohol. And you told me about how awkward you felt and how you even made a point to order or bring your own ginger ale. So it appeared as though you were having a good time and you were drinking something with alcohol so people wouldn't confront you as though there was something wrong, which they're so good at doing. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. So I did give up drinking alcohol, and I thought that would be hard, but I found it even harder to go back into those social situations and be stuck with boring sparkling water. So as you said, Sherry, I actually started bringing cans of diet ginger ale to parties so that I could put it in a glass and it would look like Prosecco or something, because people would leave me alone. So that seemed to be a constant theme, whether at work events or backyard barbecues. People would make comments and it got a little old. So the ginger ale was just kind of a quick fix when I needed it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I don't drink, and I'll go on and off. It's not like something that is mandatory for me, but it's a lifestyle change that I've decided to make. And it's funny how when you get to a party, if you just ask for a club soda or something, and it doesn't look garnished and pretty and everything, people go, "What's the matter? Are you okay? Are you sick? Do you have a problem? Do you have a drinking problem?" It's like, no, I've just decided that this is a healthier lifestyle for me. That's all. No biggie. But it's awkward. So then came this big weekend for you away with the girls. How did you handle this weekend so you could feel included and have some fun?
Yeah, it was actually, it was a couple things. I was at a neighbor's house for a Super Bowl party, and that same crew of ladies, the next weekend, we're going away to the Poconos, which was so fun, a girls' weekend. But at that Super Bowl party, I got stuck with boring seltzer yet again. And so I thought, for that girls' getaway, I knew there'd be a little bit of drinking. And that time around, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to make my own mocktail because I'm sick of feeling left out. So that's what I did. I went to the grocery store with my daughter, who back then, I think she's around 14, and then brought all these interesting ingredients like fresh citrus and some lavender extract, just different things, and kind of mixed around and had some fun and created a mocktail that I put in a 1 liter glass or 1 liter bottle, and then brought it on the trip. So it sounds kind of silly and funny, but what I can share with you was, once those corks started popping, I poured this pretty pink concoction that I made into a glass and felt so much better. I felt like I was part of the party. So it was at that very moment that I'm like, you know what? This should be a solution that everybody should have access to, because it felt just so much better. So that was a real big game-changing moment for me.
Yeah, a game-changing weekend. What a great way to fulfill your own and many, many others' social void. You felt like you were part of the party and the celebration. It's important. I mean, I go as far as, when I order club soda or sparkling water or whatever, if I'm at a bar, I ask for it in a wine glass without a straw, no ice. And, I'm very specific, because I don't want people to look at me and say, why is she sitting there drinking out of a kiddie straw with a big fat lipped glass? Game changing. Yeah. This is what you've developed. So Mingle Mocktails is born. Congratulations. What was the point that made you decide to really go for this? You had a big career in the corporate world, and you closed that door. What made you close that door and move forward?
Yeah, there was a lot of fear. There was fear of failure, fear of stepping away from the comfort of my glorious career that I still to this day treasure. I loved corporate America, but I just decided a couple things. Number one, I'm like, why not? You can always go back to your job. And that's something my husband and I talked about. He's like, if it doesn't work out, you could go back. And number two, I saw a huge opportunity. I did kind of soft pitches with friends in my network who would tell me the truth and say, geez, Laura, you're crazy. But I shared this concept to a couple folks who were like, this is a great concept. I want to invest. So I knew I had something, and I just decided to go for it. And I've never looked back.
That's great. I think your idea, your product, and your timing were perfect. You've hit the market when this big awakening and change in lifestyle is taking place. I just read the non-alcoholic beverage category is expected to increase in volume by 25% between 2022 and 2026. That's significant. I mean, I have a pretty good list as to why I think this is happening. What's the conversation like on the inside of this industry?
When I launched 6 years ago, I remember having to explain to a Whole Foods buyer outside of this local region why somebody would want to consider a line of adult non-alcoholic cocktails. And fast forward, that conversation has changed where we have retailers contacting us, which I absolutely love. So the trends are there and the data supports it. Actually, 40% of Americans don't drink, and more than half of them are women. So we're all seeking something. And like you said, Sherry, a lot of people just choose to take a break. So, they're not really like, hey, give me a sparkling water. So let's give them a mocktail. So they do feel part of the party regardless. That's what it's all about, is inclusion.
Yeah, I get it. And when I really want to celebrate, I order my sparkling water or club soda, and I tell them to drag it through the garden so it looks really, really special.
I love that, drag it through the garden. That's funny.
So what are the biggest changes or effects on your lifestyle since you decided to stop drinking alcohol?
Well, I'm not going to lie. It's all good things. There's not one negative that's come with giving up alcohol. I think some glorious immediate benefits were just the quality of sleep was phenomenal. The morning after, whether I had 2 drinks or 3, I just felt great. And then the other thing is just being fully present for my friends and family. Whether I'm at a happy hour or, late in the night in a long evening, I'm fully present and aware of what I'm discussing and who with. And I think that's a huge benefit just overall. That's been great for me.
Yeah, I think the sleeping is pretty high on my list as well. It's amazing how much just one glass of wine can affect your night's sleep. And I know that it's great when I wake up in the morning and I feel really good, but I know it was such a good sleep. I can't wait to go to bed the next night, and do it all over again. It's awesome. What don't you miss since you stopped drinking alcohol?
I don't miss feeling puffy or dehydrated. Just thinking about the fact that it's been like 8 years since I haven't had a drink. I don't think I've been in better shape in my life. I just feel really strong, and physically strong, emotionally strong. So I don't miss the feelings of just feeling off or, a little hungover, a headache. So I really treasure just good health more than ever these days.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about Mingle mocktails. They're gluten-free, vegan, they're natural. You've created guidelines, I would imagine, to stay within the categories, so they're pretty consistent.
Yeah. So, we are not just a little startup anymore. We're in almost 7,000 retailers across the country. Locally, Wegmans, we started out with bottles, but they're launching all cans in all stores in the next month or so. We're at the Pennsylvania Wine and Spirit stores. We're in some Acme's. We've launched in Whole Foods nationally. But really what it is a line of alcohol-free cocktails in cans and bottles in 5 fabulous flavors. Like this is the Blackberry Hibiscus Bellini. And these are just fruit-forward flavors inspired by top cocktails like the Cranberry Cosmo. And it enables anybody to enjoy a non-alcoholic cocktail, but they're also flexibly mixable. So I love that if you do choose to have a light cocktail, you can add a little Prosecco. We've got recipes on every can and bottle in case somebody would like to enjoy it that way. So in 1 can or bottle, social drinkers and non-drinkers alike can enjoy Mingle their way.
That's great. And I really like that you use real sugar and it's not artificial. So you get that nice, crisp, true flavor. It has a little sugar in it. It's not overpowering. And you kind of just went through some of your top varieties. I'm sorry, we're out of time. So what's on the horizon?
Well, I'm super excited. There are 2 things. Number 1, we will be launching a variety pool pack just in time for the summer, so people can sample all flavors of Mingle. And hopefully in the next month, we will be announcing a fabulous partnership with a female celebrity businesswoman who's taken a personal interest in Mingle. So stay tuned on that.
Oh, that's exciting. Congratulations. Well, I can't wait to hear more. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you very much for being on the show. I love challenges, and I especially enjoy hearing how entrepreneurs like you take your own challenges head on and create a solution for many. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much. Thanks for mingling with me.
My pleasure. For more information about Mingle mocktails, story, varieties, recipe suggestions, online purchases, and where they're available, go to www.minglemocktails, that's plural.com. And if you would like to learn more about purchasing them for resale, write to info at minglemocktails.com. Thank you again for making sure everyone is included in the celebration. Sue will be right back to close out the show. Ladies, keep living your dreams.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
If you think severe weather has been on the rise, you are correct. In the last 3 years, tornado warnings in our region have shattered records, with 52 last year alone. Half of those warnings resulted in confirmed tornadoes, including 2 extremely rare EF3s. Thanks for always trusting us to keep you informed.
50 Years of AccuWeather is sponsored by Independence Blue Cross. Choose coverage you can count on with the region's strongest network.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
From Philadelphia to the Lehigh Valley and everywhere in between. For 150 years, Penn Community Bank has been a part of your neighborhood. Helping businesses start, supporting families as they grow, and staying connected to the people and places that make this region special. It's who we are and where we're from. Penn Community Bank. Here we are, and here we grow.
There's a moment, every hour, every day, every week. These moments shape our world. They add color, perspective, and sometimes pain. Moments are meant to be shared by friends, family, people you trust. At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
That's it, everyone, for another week of Women to Watch. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you to Kateri, our producer, and all of our sponsors and Watch team members for their contributions. Next week, I'm going to be joined by Jenna Carath, and she's the head of sports tech at Comcast. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you next week.
Now, the Women to Watch, Military Watch.
Fewer than half of eligible veterans use the VA health benefits they are entitled to. But those who do use the VA, more than 80% of veterans are satisfied with the VA care. Hi, I'm Carol Eggert, Senior Vice President of Military Affairs at Comcast NBC Universal. Now, you may be asking, why should this matter to me? I share this with you because most of our listeners have some connection to the veterans in their community and may have the opportunity to share information about this new VA benefit. The VA has just launched the PACT Act, which is the Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics, which is the most significant expansion of veteran benefits and care in more than 3 decades. Empowering the VA to help millions of toxic-exposed veterans and their survivors. The PACT Act expands VA health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and many other toxic substances. The PACT Act adds to the list of health conditions that the VA presumes are caused by exposure to these substances. This law helps the VA provide generations of veterans and their survivors with the care and benefits they've earned and deserve. The PACT Act is the least we can do for the countless men and women who suffered toxic exposure while serving their country, said President Biden during the PACT Act bill signing ceremony. It means access to life insurance, home loan insurance, tuition benefits, and help with health care. So, what can you do? Simply refer those veterans you know to va.gov and tell them to search the PACT Act to learn more.